So it's just the four of us. I think just for quick introductions, I'll just say welcome to NAMI Racine's speaker series for June 30 as we wind down and honor Pride Month. We have some special guests here. If there was a problem with the Zoom link, we will certainly make this recording available on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So I'm Michelle Gary and I'm with NAMI Racine. Why don't we just go around to make introductions?
Sure. My name's Barb Farrar. I'm the Executive Director of the LGBT Center of Southeast Wisconsin, serving Racine, Kenosha, and Walworth counties.
Hi, my name is Justin Kansdorf. I'm Permanent Supportive Housing Program Manager for the Center for Veterans Issues in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Hi, I'm Vishal Patel, and I'm just an intern and understudy under Michelle Gary.
No, you're not just an intern, you're an intern. Oh, here we go. Now we got
someone.
Yeah,
I don't know. This is the first time I've introduced myself in
I
one of
know.
these meetings.
They
So
used to always tell us that in nursing schools too. They'd say, you're not just a student.
that's true.
So here comes Shay. Hi, Shay.
Hello.
Hi. Shay, did that link work okay?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. So we had a few words. I'm learning about how they expire, and we had a couple of people ask for them, so I just wanted to make sure I resent it too. So.
Oh yeah, it was fine on my end. I'm just late for not link related reasons.
Oh, that's no. Well, we're a little late because of glitches, and then my computer the screen went blue, and it made that face where it says it's collecting data. So then I logged in my phone. So one day we will meet again in person. So we're just making introductions. If you would like to go ahead.
Sure, I'm Shay. I use they them pronouns. What kind of stuff are we putting in our introductions?
Anything, who we are, where we're from.
Okay. I live in Racine. I'm one of the board members of the LGBT Center, and I also work for United Way.
Well, thanks for being here. With a group this small, I think we can keep it, really informal. And I know Barb and I talked yesterday about some ideas as far as just continuing the conversation as we close out Pride Month and just honoring LGBTQ needs, safe spaces, what we can do to strengthen our allyship, both as people and also as nonprofit workers or members of the community. So we had some thoughts, and Barb, if you want to go first, you're kind of the expert, I think, here among all of us. But
Well, I don't know about that, but I will. I certainly wear that hat sometimes. But I just wanted to thank you, Michelle and NAMI, for recognizing LGBTQ awareness through Pride Month. This is a very special time for us. We're very busy. We're celebrating. At the same time, we're acknowledging all of the struggles that we continue to have, whether it be through laws or mental health struggles or lack of employment opportunities or domestic violence, and of course the violence that is incurred against people of color, as well as our trans folks. So that being said, we're glad to be here, and the LGBT Center and NAMI actually have quite a bit in common in terms of the way that we provide support to our community. We do not have a licensed therapist on our staff, but we do believe in the value of a support group in which people who have similar experiences can share that and grow. And as long as those groups have some structure where people feel safe and welcome and empowered to tell their story, we can learn from one another. The center currently has multiple support groups. We have a spirituality group, which is not a religious group, but it's literally we tackle some of the big questions, like what does it mean to be human and things like that. We have a Parenting with Pride group, which is phenomenal. This is a group of probably about a half dozen people who have young people who are primarily coming out as non-binary or trans. And we have an elder group, which is 40 plus, and like the youth, elders can also feel very isolated, especially in post-pandemic or still in pandemic situations. And we have a youth group, which is 14 to 18, which is actually led by a clinical licensed therapist who works with middle school youth and does virtual therapy sessions in the community. So we're very lucky to have Kelly Hogland-Zumstein do that. And I think that level of professionalism is really appropriate for our young people. And she does outings, like we went to a Brewers Pride game not long ago. And we also have we have an umbrella group, which is kind of an everybody group, because sometimes even the LGBT community, we get in our silo. Lesbians hang out with lesbians, gay men hang out with gay men, trans people hang out with trans people. So the umbrella group is a way to kind of dismantle that and learn from each other, because the LGBT community is not immune from misgendering or from not understanding somebody else's different experience, whether it be socioeconomic, color of your skin, religion, geographic upbringing. So we try and bring people together. And the glaring missing pieces are two groups that we have had in the past and that we hopefully will be bringing back soon. And that is our transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary support group, which is extremely valuable to our community, as well as our ACE group, which is ACE stands for, is short for asexuality. Asexuals are under the LGBTQ umbrella, and they are welcome. And we find that there are actually quite a few people in the LGBT community that cross over into the ACE group. And again, the more we learned about the spectrum of gender identity, sexual orientation, biological sex, it's just natural that we kind of overlap with things like asexuality, people expressing love and romantic attraction in different ways. So that is a pillar of what we do at the center right now in terms of support groups. We also do advocacy, we have events, and other services like training. We do an LGBTQ safe zone training, and our center is small but mighty, and everything we do is really trying to provide what I call high impact services, right? So if we're talking to 50 people who belong to a church who don't know what a transgender person experiences on a day-to-day level, and we can spend an hour with them and really drill down what that looks like, then we've done our job. Then that is why we exist. So that's a little bit about the center. And like I said, like I first started talking, the peer-to-peer model in terms of how we learn from one another is really an amazing way for us to build future leaders, to share personal experiences, and to build coalitions around advocacy work that we need to do.
Mute here. Thanks, Barb. So okay, so I can go. Can you hear me? Got a little prompt there. Okay, so yeah, so thanks. So we're a lot like the LGBT Center. Also, we're also small and mighty-ish. So I've been here since January of 2020. So I'm just kind of trying to build that stability and build relationships, partnerships with other agencies. I think that we've kind of become like a family. So we went through some of the safe zone training for our staff and our employees and our board, and just learning how to strengthen our diversity for not only ourselves and our staff, but for the participants who come to NAMI and really the community in general. So I know one thing that we're working on that we would love your input on, or if you have ideas in the future, is so NAMI is also peer based. And some of you might be familiar with our peer support groups and our peer-to-peer classes. So all of us who lead the groups have lived experience with mental illness and or substance abuse. So my diagnosis is general anxiety and major depression. So after having gone through treatment and now being in the maintenance phase, I hope that makes me a stronger peer. But everything we do is based on that model. And that's kind of through NAMI National, and there's the evidence and the data to back that up. But I think more importantly, just that human connection with peers, saying I've been there, I understand, I can empathize even though our situations are different. So that's kind of NAMI's signature just across the board. So it was Barb's idea actually about what might it look like if we took kind of the best and the evidence and the strongest of how we connect with the peer-based model, and then brought in LGBT center perspective and expert opinions and guidance as far as creating a NAMI peer support group for the LGBTQ community. And so Barb hustled and got some grant money, and we've got some consultants and partners working on that. So things like that, I think, are really great. I know one of the first things when I started this role was the best advice I got was when you're working with people, make sure that you're doing a targeted, have a focused approach rather than mental health, because there's such a need and you're going to burn out. And I didn't really listen at first, but COVID kind of taught me when we had to back away, it's like, okay, this is what it means by focused. So we'd love to keep you posted. And if you have input or want to be a part of that, I think we could certainly, Nicole's here, we could certainly do that. But that's kind of been our flagship here. So I'm just happy that we're moving this conversation forward. I think along the lines of mental illness, the whole sexual identity or gender fluidity, am I using the terms correctly, Barb? But that whole concept has always been heavily stigmatized. Growing up, we never talked about it. So I didn't have, conversations or really thoughts about my own identities until I was probably in my 40s or 50s. So just being able to move this conversation forward has been, I think, a good step. So I want to make sure that we keep strengthening that. And I want to make sure, like, at least for me as an ally, that it goes beyond just, I'm an ally because I have gay friends or something. I really want to focus. And it reminds me, I don't know if anyone watches Sex and the City, but the conversation when Charlotte, who's identifies as a straight woman, had a gay male friend here and a gay male friend here, and she tried to set them up. And they couldn't stand each other. And she said, I really thought you two of you would hit it off. And he says, why? Because he's gay and I'm gay? And she kind of said, well, yeah. And he said, that's not how it works. And she's like, oh. And so I think being well-intentioned and having a good heart play are part of it. But for me, I think, and also representing NAMI, I want us to keep this energy moving forward so that we are as strong of allies as we want to be. So thanks. Hi, Nicole. Okay, so that's my part, Barb.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to what you said, Michelle. This project was funded by a local family foundation. And so when you get to work with these family foundations, you can really get to know people who are behind this, who are able to fund different projects. And that is the case. And this person totally got it right off the bat and was willing to give us some money to do this. So that said, I think when you start looking at people who struggle with mental health, the LGBT community unfortunately represents a large percentage of those folks. And there are reasons why the depression, anxiety, isolation that comes from being in the LGBT community can be extremely challenging. And then you put gender identity on top of that. You put and coming out in a world that still doesn't understand what it means to be trans or non-binary can be extremely challenging. And we hear a lot about microaggressions for people of different races. Well, the same occurs for people who are in the LGBT community. How many times have you picked up a form that just has, you know, male, female on it, or mother, father, and it's everywhere. So these kind of issues just continue to build, and even at a young age, 12, 13, 14, people can experience those pretty severe, mental health. It's hard. It's hard. And then not having the support either in school or families or churches or sports, whatever you're into, can be very difficult. So this is just a labor of love, I think, on both of our parts. I myself don't claim to be an expert, but I love to research, and I'm sure that the curriculum we will put together will be one that can be used widely, and that is the goal, and we won't stop until it's there.
I think so too. And I think we've really, in conversations, so we meet with NAMI Wisconsin, all the branches across the state, about once a month, and they're really on board too with helping us. So I think the time is now, and it's right to really keep the message going. And I know when I was, so prior to working at NAMI, I taught nursing at UWM in Parkside, and there was just starting to be a buzz. So for example, like you mentioned on health assessment forms, you know, when you go to the doctor and you fill it out, there are always two genders, male or female. And looking at, I think it was students in their project who started expanding that. And, you know, they really taught us as clinicians who had been a while, because we never talked about that in school, and then working with people who are in the trans population. So if someone, for example, is trans male to female, and no prior to surgery or no surgical assignment, and still has, you know, a prostate exam, for example, and then having to explain to the insurance company why there are only two boxes, who identifies as female is getting these lab results, and just how to communicate with each other as providers and with people about our patients in a manner that is sensitive and advocating for them getting care, regardless of how or if they can pay, I think is really something that's hitting, you know, the clinical community too. So I mean, as far as doing research, I think this next generation, for me at least, I'm finding is going to teach us middle-aged people who've been with it. I think they're going to teach us a lot as far as how to guide those conversations, because when we were in school, it just was never thought. It was never thought about. So maybe there would be like one paragraph in one section about, you know, vulnerable populations or something. But I'm really happy to see just whole courses and semesters and projects being built around it. So I'm always eyes, ears, hands, whatever, wide open. Any other thoughts?
I think one of the things that we have noticed, or that I have noticed at the center, is just how strong the community allyship is. So if you look at our events, I would say probably half of the people who attend most of our events are our allies, straight, cis folks. And we couldn't do it without them. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that. And I think with that goes that advocacy piece. So I always use the example of Thanksgiving dinner when Uncle Bob goes off on the gays, or just fill in the blank, whatever he's angry about that day. And you know, how do you navigate those conversations? How do you stand up for for the queer community or somebody who's Black or brown or Indigenous. It's really important that we learn to do that. And, you know, in our safe zone training, that's one of the things that we talk about. It's people have to be willing to take risks. The word ally is a verb. And if you're not taking action to fight for what you believe in, then you are being very passive and you're basically condoning that type of behavior. So we always suggest that people, even if it means risking, you know, not being invited to Thanksgiving next year, standing up for your principles and saying it's not okay to out somebody, it's not okay to talk derogatorily around somebody that you don't know their experience or just because they're out as queer. So that is something that is, I think, happening more and more. And unfortunately, our movement is coming off of the Black Lives Matter movement. But let's face it, it has to be done. This is hard work. And if our culture is to get to a point where we can accept everyone as equals, then we have to go through these steps. And we get to go through these steps to get to the other side. So I had mentioned earlier that we do a safe zone training, and that's something that we offer once a month for free, Monday nights on Zoom, our favorite platform. From 5 to 6, we do a training. It's myself and Carl Hubbard, who's our board president, and perhaps we'll add others as well. We talk about vocabulary because the vocabulary in the queer community has changed quite a bit in a short amount of time. And once people understand, we spend probably 15 minutes talking about some key words, like what does it mean to misgender somebody? What is dysphoria? And in order to understand the queer experience, you have to use the vocabulary and understand what it means in order to be understanding of that and to move through and to grow and educate yourself on how to be a better ally. And it's just beautiful to, I keep using the church analogy, but we keep going to organizations that are liberal or middle of the road, and we just watch the faces light up. When you start talking about a gender spectrum, they're like, oh, like choo, like stars are coming out of their head. It's beautiful because it is a beautiful concept to know that male is, you know, male here, female here, but most of us are somewhere in the middle. And the same with sexual orientation. You know, you might be a cis man married to a cis woman, but let's face it, there's variation in there, and there's romantic attraction, there's sexual attraction. And so I'm just really proud of the safe zone that we have developed. It's for an hour, and then the last half hour is Q&A. We've probably trained 200 or 250 through that community safe zone this year, which is, I think, says a lot of the need in our community and how a little platform like Zoom and a couple hours a month allows us to really make a difference in our community. So that's pretty cool. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Would you like for us to share any specific experiences or?
You know, if you're whatever you're comfortable with or whatever you feel like talking about some of these programs that we're developing, if in the group there are things that you might want to see, or Vishal, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Vishal is our social work intern in the coming semester for the year. Anything you'd like to be involved in as far as this work, or questions you might have, or things you wish you were taught in the textbook that maybe we could incorporate into your teaching, or that you could then take and then teach in a project or with other students or in the community. But yeah, feel free. And Justin, I saw your unmute go on, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you too. So feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, I think you were on the spot, Michelle. I remember you talked about like us like growing up and learning in textbooks via like classes and whatnot, um, when it came to the specifics, like when it came to gender identity, sexual identity, and whatnot, there's barely any information, and most of the stuff that I learned personally just came through word of mouth. I learned through experiences with other people that may identify different than me or same as me, and that's how I learned. And I mean, it's fortunate that I'm able to grow up in a time period like this, when uh, just the support and allyhood of LGBTQI plus and just all sorts of marginalized groups has seen such a like um, revitalization. Like uh, I feel like if I was born a little like earlier, I wouldn't have seen something like this. And honestly, I might not have even gotten to social work if I didn't realize that, hey, this is a line of work that helps people that of all backgrounds. So like, it's just, I think you hit the mark right there. And then when it comes to like me personally, I try to be an ally for all sorts of groups, but you know, I'm not perfect just as any other human. So if anything, I feel like a good a good curriculum should also include the LGBT community. I feel like a lot of the time, like me personally, I go through like critical race theory, um, just a lot of like racial power dynamics and whatnot. There's a lot about race and stuff, and you know that's important too. But there's all sorts of groups out there that need our support, and of course, one of them being the LGBTQ like plus community. So, yeah, if anything, I'd like to see that further, and hopefully through my field work, I can learn how to support that community better.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm really excited that you're taking this on because I used to be one of the support group facilitators for the LGBT Center. And I was in charge of the trans support group for a while, and I can't think of a single trans person who doesn't have some kind of trauma. So the mental health intersection is so important there. And I think, like, thinking back to my experiences with the group, it was a very open-ended group on our end. Um, but one of the things that I was trying to figure out how to implement was like, are there ways to bring certain like discussion themes or like activities into the groups on a week by week basis so that participants have like maybe those with like a little bit more anxiety like me know what they're looking forward to and what to prepare themselves for. And there were certainly those who like enjoyed the open-ended nature of the group, but that was something that I think would have helped, especially from the mental health standpoint for me. But yeah, I'm really excited you're doing this. This is really cool.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that Shay was able to participate and lead the trans group for some time, co-facilitating with another person for a good chunk of that. And it was really successful. I think we had about, I don't know, anywhere between like 8 and 14 people, just depending on the night. It was pretty cool. Yeah, and you're right. There is underlying experiences of trauma and isolation, depression, anxiety. I mean, these are themes. And you know, how do you manage self-care? How do you do that? How can you troubleshoot a situation at work or with a partner? Well, that collective experience is so important, and creating a curriculum that helps facilitate those discussions, as you were just saying, Shay, is going to be really valuable, I think, all around. Developing positive coping skills. How do you get yourself out of certain situations when you've been misgendered or you're experiencing dysphoria? What are alternatives to, like, you know, self-harm? What's a positive way to do that? And how do you make that shift cognitively to get yourself out of that situation? And that's by hopefully this curriculum will name some of those specific situations in which people have a crossroads to make maybe a better decision or a more informed decision, or at least be aware that there's options. They may not even take that route, but that is going to be the creating some guardrails and educating people who don't have this experience about what others are experiencing. And I'm not saying normalize that, but make it part of the experience of 2021 and beyond, because it's real.
Any other thoughts from the panel or questions, ideas?
I just got back from a gay and sober conference in New York City. And I think like also an element to mental illness within the LGBT community is sobriety, because there's so much drug and alcohol abuse to treat any type of mental health issue. I know that for me, alcohol really numbed a lot of my pain and suffering definitely with the depression and the anxiety and the ADHD. So all that stuff kind of got out of control, and this conference just really opened my eyes to like how important this journey of sobriety has been for my mental health as well, and for healing, you know, all of the damages I had done to myself and the hurt and pain I caused others. And so I think sobriety is a great thing to focus on as well when we're talking about mental health issues within the gay community, or the LGBTQ community at whole, because it was amazing. I learned, you know, I treated it with alcohol, but there was so many people that use like meth for sex and you know, a whole bunch of other drugs that were very, very common within our community. And just having that conversation, just to open up the conversation with people about, you know, how are you dealing with this? Are you using alcohol or drugs, you know, and what are some better coping mechanisms, maybe besides alcohol and drugs, to work your way through this pain that you're going through this trauma that you've been through. I think for people to have that type of support early on is so important, because I don't know if they have other ways of, and it's great to hear that there are support groups that are being done with the LGBT Center and NAMI addressing these things. So it's a really important work that you guys are doing, and I'm so happy to hear that like the communities have that already going for them. So yeah, I just wanted to chime in about just some AODA stuff, throw it in there into the mix.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for, I know you've shared your journey, and I think you've helped so many people share our own stories and experiences. So thank you. And if I could put you on the spot for a minute in the good way, I mean, when I was going through treatment, I was in a program for about 6 weeks, and Justin, you actually reached out to me, and it's just the kindness and can I take you to see a play, and came over and you fed me chicken and we bonded over ice cream sundaes. So just like sometimes those little acts of kindness when we're sharing our stories for the first time, it can be a really scary experience. When those doors lock for the first time in a locked unit, it can be a really scary experience. So just finding those kind of relationships, I think, has really taught me a lot. So when I say by sharing your experience, it's not just your story, but I'm lucky enough to have known you for many years, and to have that kind of friendship, I think, and I hope makes me a better person / ED / advocate / ally and all those other isms that I'm trying to be. So just thank you for that. And thank you for the panel. We talked at the beginning when we did introductions for those who missed. Barb and I were talking about how both our agencies are small but mighty, and I kind of feel that at this table tonight. There's, I think, 5 or 6 of us, and I think that we're kind of small but mighty, and I know for me, deeply flawed. And so we just bring all of that to the table, and I think we're lucky to have that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you, Justin. That's always stayed with me, and I hope to mirror that in my own actions with people. So
Thank you. That's really nice.
yeah.
So I can only, my own experience is, you know, growing up in the 80s and, well, being in college in the 80s actually, and just not having any resources whatsoever. And, you know, coming out in a school that maybe 2 out of 3,000, 3 or 4 that were queer, and me being one of those, and just feeling completely isolated. And yeah, it was alcohol. It was alcohol often, and it to excess, and it was the way that you got through it. And I cannot help but think that had I been in a different environment, had it been okay to talk about, okay, if there had been an LGBT center or any place that was not, you know, driving 40 minutes, knocking 3 times on a door that had a red light that was open, like my life would be very, very different. I'd probably have a few more brain cells, first of all. And I would, I'd probably be more forgiving for myself and more, you know, I think as queer people, we often have very high expectations, and sometimes it's hard to love ourselves and to be forgiving. Like you said, Michelle, we are all flawed, and we're also all beautiful at the same time. So it's finding that peace with yourself as a queer person, or as somebody who's wrestled with addiction or mental health, and depression comes right after that or right with it. So fortunately I was able to get out of that, but I still struggle with depression. It's something that follows me every day. So you just have to kind of regroup and get through it. But being able to talk to people about that is it means the world, really.
Yeah, I think so too. So we're coming up on usually where we start around the Q&A portion. I think we've been pretty interactive, which is a benefit of the group this size. So if it's all right with all of you, I'll leave it open to further discussion. I think you all have my emails, but just in case, I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, any last comments, questions, things you'd like to see us doing as partners or organizations, or that sort of thing?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna quick say that I mean, Michelle brought it up, Barbara brought it up, Shay, you too, Justin also, like just the importance of the intersectionality when it comes to like these sorts of topics. In this case, we talked about the LGBTQ community and mental health, substance abuse, just like those sort of topics I think are going to be crucial when it comes to like the curriculum that you're proposing. Because I know that a lot of people, if someone can identify with something, some struggle, some topic or something, it becomes easier to connect it to another more like unexplored like identity topic, whatever. Because I'm a straight cis male, so although I'm an ally for the LGBTQ community, it's my experience in that realm is more streamlined because it's the like standard that's in power, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I just wanted to emphasize how like important it is to discuss those sort of again intersectionalities and whatnot.
And I was going to suggest a couple of like I don't know how far you've gotten in your curriculum ideas so far, so maybe this has already come up for you, but like medical trauma is a big thing. Like, how do you navigate the medical system? Like, when you have your mental health needs to take care of, and that makes it challenging to like be your full advocate for yourself, but also like now you have to figure out like how much of yourself you're bringing into that setting, or like how to deal with it if you need to for gender affirming care or something like that. I think another thing is that the internet makes it very easy to have like queer communities, or at least like clear media streams online. So there's this, I feel like for myself, and especially for my younger siblings who are like now coming into their queer identities, there's this like splitting of yourself that you have to do, where it's like, you know, you're affirmed and you know you're okay, but only like in this part of your life. So then like, how do you deal with having to like hide the rest of that, like in your home environment or your work environment or wherever it may be that you're dealing with like not being able to come out. So that's another really big thing, because I think the thing that makes the trauma like the worst is not having a space to be fully yourself, especially if it's not as physical a space. So both bringing that out and finding ways to cope with that is big.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, that is huge. I had a friend I have a friend who's from Eritrea near Ethiopia, and she moved to the United States when she was like 12. She's a lesbian, but she's not out, but she has 4 Facebook pages, one with all of her gay friends, one with her professional friends that kind of know, you know, who she lives with. Then she has one for her professional career outside of her immediate work group. And then she's got one for her family that's still back in Africa. And she goes back and forth. I mean, can you imagine the anxiety of like, oh my gosh, am I in the right group? Anyway, yeah, to your point, that's exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. And yeah, those are things that I think it's important, you know, it's important for us to know as providers and allies, how to work with someone. I remember in my floor nursing days, we would ask every morning on 1 to 10 scales about pain, depression, you know, anxiety, put your anxiety in 1 to 10. And we would look to make sure that there wasn't like a downward spiral, but really knowing why someone is anxious, I think is important for us to remember too, and then gradually building that relationship so that people feel that we can be trusted with that kind of really personal, deeply personal information. Okay. Any closing thoughts, questions, ideas?
I'd just like to thank Michelle for putting this presentation on, for being willing to work with us and to share your expertise and knowledge with our expertise and knowledge to make this a really great training opportunity for others. So thank you. And thank you, Shay, for being on our,
yes.
with a board member, being on the call as well. So
yeah. And thank you. Vishal has been at so many of our forums and virtual things. So thank you for your engagement. The semester, I should mention, the semester hasn't even started yet. So this is just on his own free will and enthusiasm. So it's great to have your energy too. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, you gotta put in the work.
So yeah, so this will be recorded, and usually by like the next day or so, I'll share it with you all and on our Facebook page. So thank you so much, and have a good night.